Good morning, everybody. This is the Personal Playlist Podcast, fondly referred to as the P3 on Voice Ed Radio. I'm Noah Daniel.
Music is a world within itself, with a language we all understand.
I am so excited to have Royan Lee here on the Personal Playlist Podcast. Not only is he the curriculum coordinator for Assessment the Arts, CC, Leading and Learning for the York Region District School Board, he is an artist, a writer, a speaker, and really an all-around interesting guy. You should definitely check out his website, royanlee.com, but he speaks on parent engagement, educational technology, digital citizenship, privacy and security in a digital world, and creativity and collaboration. This is Royan Lee, everybody. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Noah. What a nice introduction. Thanks for that. It's always very humbling to hear someone speak about you that way.
Well, there are so many ways that you have come to my attention in the last year and a half. It's amazing. I mean, your presence online is so positive and encouraging and creative, and there are 3 different people that have actually come on the P3 that said, you know who you should call. And it was you. And it was funny because when Chris Clough first mentioned it, he was talking about you musically and what an amazing musician you are. So I was so happy that I saw some of your covers on your website. But, you know, Jen Giffen was talking about it more from a leadership standpoint, and Debbie Donsky was talking about it more in like the general, you have to have Royan Lee on the show. So I'm so happy that you made time in what's clearly a very busy schedule to come and hang out with me and talk about your personal playlist.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And as soon as you mentioned music, I could talk about music all day. So, yeah.
You're into lots of different kinds of music and you play music. And I noticed that actually your first job in public school was teaching music. So
yeah, it was.
Do you play lots of different instruments, and have you always played?
No, I'm like a really crude, self-taught musician. Like I like a lot of people, I did grow up with some degree of piano lessons. I never really remember liking it like most people.
Right.
However, there's probably aspects of that I don't even realize laid a foundation for some degree of like a starting point. But at the same time, like, I don't really play any instruments except guitar and ukulele, and I mostly play them quite badly. But just enough.
I'm sorry. I've watched
to
you,
go along.
and I think you need a different descriptor. So I'm going to open your mind to finding another adjective.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it is, but.
And, you know, the adverb of playing something badly, like it, not only do you model your willingness to try new things and get messy and take risks, but you share it in the most interesting, humble way. So it's funny that you were humbled by the introduction, because there's just so much of what you do that people can have access to and be inspired by. So, what do you do every single day? Like, I know you spend a lot of time with your daughters and that your family's really important to you, but your day must start very early and be busy all the time.
I'm actually like a really boring guy, because I'm a family man of a wonderful, beautiful wife and 3 kids and 2 dogs and in a suburban home with a minivan. So like every stereotype that you want to lay on me from just knowing that about me pretty much applies. Like my daily life is just like work and what do the kids need me to do, basically. But I love it at the same time, right? Like I think partly because growing up, I didn't grow up with like the most stable home, and I didn't grow up feeling my future was necessarily going to work out conventionally. So like when it did turn out, as it turns out, I'm a pretty conventional guy now. So I actually take quite a lot of pleasure in it. Yeah.
And why wouldn't you? What a wonderful thing to achieve. I don't think that reflects mediocrity. It just reflects balance and joy. So I think it's wonderful. And I live that picture minus one of the dogs, but I live that picture. And I think it's pretty fantastic.
It is. It is.
You sent me these 3 songs, and the idea of the show is, we spend time unpacking your nostalgic song, a song that reflects your identity, and a song that lifts you up when you're feeling low. Tell me a little bit about the process of choosing your 3 songs.
Well, first I should thank you for, inviting me to this podcast and just like provoking me with that question to begin with, what seems like months ago, I think, right?
Yeah, it was months ago.
Yeah, because
I like that you said provoking you, because you provoked me with your Doodle a Day challenge last year. So I love provocations. Okay, go on.
Well, I love, it was nice because it gave me a lot of time to daydream about that, because I'm also a typical music fan in the sense that like in the movie High Fidelity, I don't know if you've seen that.
Yes, I have.
Film, but, I'm kind of like, high fidelity type where I like talking about it, ranking songs and like, talking about what's my favorite, bassists in, and stuff like that. So like when you asked me, it was also frustrating because obviously being a huge music fan, it was difficult to choose 3 songs, but the first one was pretty easy, for me to pick. And I don't know if you want me to get into that now, but
okay, well, we can go there. That's fine.
Okay.
So, I mean, I figured we come from a similar timeline because this song is kind of like punk meets disco in this very interesting female lead. Why is this song your nostalgic song?
Actually, I should probably. Oh yeah. I'm just gonna pause for a second. Go back to your previous question because
okay, because then we'll come back. Okay, sure, whatever works for you.
How did you go about choosing the 3? It all kind of like started first with Heart of Glass by Blondie, and then I thought like, well, since there are literally about 1 million songs that I feel uplift me, and probably the equivalent amount that I identify with my own self and identity. I thought, well, maybe I could find the other 2 songs that I feel have a certain common thread to Heart of Glass in an evolutionary kind of way,
Wow.
So like
I've never heard it done that way. That's so cool.
Yeah, because I'm kind of fascinated by that too. Like being someone who likes multiple genres and also loves really well done pop music. I just love the idea that the little subtle ways in which musical genres influence each other and artists influence each other, and mostly unconsciously, right? So, anyway, so that's how I chose the 3 songs. It also reflects what's going on with me as a music fan at the moment, which I feel like I'm having like a music fan renaissance, and it's partly due to these streaming services. So I finally signed up for a streaming service subscription, and I just love the way it's getting me out of my own collection and just like introducing me to a lot of music that I otherwise wouldn't have encountered, and a lot of it new stuff from new artists. So that's another reason why I chose the tracks that I did. Yeah, but okay, in terms of Heart of Glass, if you want me to start there, why I chose that one. Yeah. As you've said, Noah, I'm sure, you probably have a story with that song too. And most people of our generation do, because it was like a very seminal track. Right. And, the biggest, strongest memory for me is I associate that song with actually falling in love with music to begin with. Because when I was very young, I must have been like 5 years old. I can't remember exactly, but I do remember it was in our first apartment at Bathurst and Finch in Toronto. And my dad was really into stereo equipment. He didn't have anything fancy, but he just had the standard thing that most families in the 80s had. And he had 7-inch singles. And I remember being fascinated with the machinery of the stereo, first of all. And I used to love taking the 7-inch out of its little paper, and putting it on, and then putting the needle on the record. And I have such a visceral memory of putting the needle on Heart of Glass and feeling the bass line and the Roland drum machine, and just being like, just having a physical reaction to it. The best way I can describe it is I remember putting it on, lying down in front of the record player, and just being kind of like sent into this wonderful vortex where the only thing you're paying attention to is that song, and everything else disappears. And because to me, Heart of Glass is like the perfect song, the perfect pop song. And pretty much like a billion other pop songs descended from their innovation in that one, I think.
Well, let's play it and get everybody on the same page.
Cool.
So here's Blondie with Heart of Glass. That song, I go back viscerally to this place where for many, many years, obviously, like with most songs, I didn't know the meaning of the song. But later on, it gives you this sense of resilience, and it gives you this power. As a woman, especially with this edgier feel, I really liked it. So tell me what it did for you, besides listening to it and transporting you to whatever place. Of all the songs you could have chosen, why does that say nostalgia for you?
Well, mostly because it just brings back that memory of being young in our first old immigrant apartment, and just it helps me remember all the great times of being of living there in a cockroach infested apartment full of people who shouted a lot in different languages. And, ran around and caused trouble. Like that's what it brings me back to. And when you ask me that question about what my daily life is now, which is like quite different to that experience, although similar in some ways, but in terms of socioeconomically quite different, it really reminds me of how great that experience was. And sometimes we talk about the experience of being like a first generation Canadian as bringing a lot of like turmoil or a challenge or a barrier to your life. But it really reminds me of how great it was, like how fun it was, and to kind of be the first generation in a new world.
That was really well put. So now that we're talking a little bit about you and your identity, tell me a little bit about your story and where you came from and how you became the you that you are now.
Oh, well, where I came from. I came from, Bathurst and Finch in Toronto. And for people who know that area, it's a pretty cool area. Like I grew up at this in the apartment building that I described there, across from Northview Heights Secondary School, and it was a wonderful place. Like when I look back on the few photos that I have of that time, it's really cool to see all the different colors of the kids in the photo, and those were like kind of American dream times, and life was pretty good, just kind of figuring that out, going to school and growing up. And my parents were from South Korea, from a very, very, very different time than it is now, before it became a relative economic powerhouse. And so they're very different to the Korean immigrants that you might meet that come over now, because they didn't have much formal education, and they came here to live that working class lifestyle. But then they also tried to join what was really common, as you'll probably remember, Noah, in which like pretty much every convenience store in the Greater Toronto area was usually run by a Korean family. So my parents eventually started managing a store. I thought that was great growing up. I didn't realize that the money in the cash register was like just our money. So wasn't just our money. So I distinctly remember thinking that we were really rich just because we had money in a cash register. And I thought, wow, we really moved up in the world, because like we owned chips and pop and chocolate bars and like cans of Campbell's soup and a lot of money in this cool machine box. So and then, growing up, I kind of grew up a really typical Toronto kid, navigating different worlds, experiencing some difficulty as a result of that, but building up a lot of strength as a result of that as well. I think I probably had the most difficult time going to high school, because that's kind of when the rubber meets the road for you. And that's when I just started like questioning a lot about the world around me. And also it coincided with my family kind of unraveling due to what I think is partly due to just the extended toll of the kind of lower socioeconomic immigrant existence. And so, and that led me to all sorts of adventures, however, because it was a difficult time for me that I eventually escaped by literally leaving the country. And a lot of that's when my kind of, coming of age story kind of began. So, and now, now you find me here in Richmond Hill, in the suburbs, with a beautiful family and really thriving and engaging career that I have. So I don't know. I guess that's just a summary of the whole thing.
Your identity song comes in modern times, and this is who you are now as a result of all of those experiences. Do you want to introduce how the song connects to what you were just saying?
Yeah, so Heart of Glass is a song that I think most people listening to this will know, but I think the other two songs are probably ones that most haven't encountered. And this was the hardest song to pick, which I'm guessing that this is the case for most of your guests in terms of which is the hardest.
You seem to be correct, actually, yeah.
Yeah. Well, when you ask somebody like what song reflects your identity, it's a bit more of a deeper question, right? So I chose the song Love Somebody by Taku and Wafia for multiple reasons. The first being, just like Heart of Glass, like sonically, I love the song. To me, again, it's another really perfect song in terms of its entire composition from beginning to end, in terms of the use of the hook, in terms of the use of the pace and the beats per minute. And also, like I mentioned before, I think it has a lot of connective tissue to Heart of Glass, because if you listen carefully, it's kind of the evolution of some of the equipment that Heart of Glass used when they innovated with the Roland drum machine, and also the meaning of the song is something that I identify with strongly because it's a song co-written by two kids basically that grew up like I did. Taku is from Australia, and he grew up as a multiracial child in a white world, and he seems to have experienced a lot of the triumph and failures that I did growing up. So, and then he sought out a collaboration with Wafia, who also is from that part of the world. But her background is a little different in that she is not only comes from a multiracial and a multicultural background, but also has the added interesting intersectionality of being both a woman and a woman of Muslim descent. So, with that in her background. So them combining together and creating this synergy, bringing both their stories of growing up and having struggles with their family, and co-writing a song about how there's a lot of pain growing up and a lot of struggle trying to keep the family together, but that love still kind of binds everyone together nevertheless, is something that very profoundly spoke to me in both the lyrics and the way that it's sung and composed. It's a really beautiful
Such a
song.
beautiful introduction. Okay, well, let's play Love Somebody by Taku and Wafia.
Mistake from the beginning. I've swallowed my pride, 'cause I'm willing. See, I'd rather take the blame than break it off. Darling, understand my faith wavers when I can't see the end. And I know you truly believe that our love will keep us from the edge. I know we never get it right. We only ever seem to fight. Anyone else would walk away. When you love somebody, then you stay. Oh, oh, oh. When you love somebody, oh, oh, oh. When you love somebody, oh, oh, oh. When you love somebody, oh, oh. When you love somebody.
Yeah, that song had like this hypnotic feel and this intensity. When you think about that song, what words come to your mind in terms of your identity, although you introduced it so beautifully?
Well, oh God, yeah, the lyrics are just really intense for me, and I guess when the first line when it goes, when Wafia comes in with her kind of falsetto soprano, I know we never get it right. We only always seem to fight. That part like really hits home to me because it kind of is very reflective of the kind of unfortunately the interactions that I have with my own mother, father, and brother. Like we fight a lot all the time. So it doesn't sound very nice, but it just kind of that's how we interact. And I think there's also some positive in that too, in that we're very direct with one another. So like, there aren't many things that remain under the rug, so to speak.
Yeah, there are no elephants in your room.
Yeah,
I get it.
That's right. So like, I remember for my wife, well, even to this day, even though we've been married almost 20 years, at first it was really jarring for her because that's not the way that she grew up. And to see loved ones just kind of escalating into to just like shouting at one another at any given time was pretty alarming for her. It's also probably something that most people that know me who don't live with me are like, that's an aspect that they're often shocked by when I mention that, because a lot of people regard me as a pretty like relaxed individual. But yeah, that line really hits home. And then the chorus is so beautiful. I love that contrast between like them singing about, my life is crap kind of thing, and then going into this amazingly angelic chorus.
It's so cool how your identity, there was this line that I've picked up on, how you can be a masterpiece and a work in progress all at the same time. And that's kind of the way I was thinking about the song's contrast with the chorus. So I think that's what you're alluding to, that, at the same time, there's chaos and there's beauty. And sometimes they happen as parallels, even though
it's funny you mentioned that, because it reminds me that like cultures that we know of that have really innovated in music often are from really difficult circumstances, right? Like, so for example, a lot of innovation, including the two songs that we've been talking about today, they're ultimately can be traced back to innovations made by a lot of Black musicians in America, right? So, and we know that, whether it's jazz, whether it's blues, whether it's hip hop, whether it's reggae from Jamaica, a lot of it came from really challenging circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, adversity breeds a lot of things, and I think music is always the positive end of that. Any form of art and any form of expression and a way out of yourself and your scenario, whether it's real or virtual, imagined, is wonderful. And that it has contributed so much to the world, but it's important to understand that struggle can breed creativity too. I think as we live in this world where people have become more and more averse to struggle and challenge, I think that perseverance that we talk about, that grit, those songs all tell us those stories. But sometimes it's hard to persevere, and we need music to pick us up, and we need to like feel good, and we need to kick back. So you have this pick me up song that you chose. That's this Korean hip hop song. So why don't you introduce that?
Yeah. So, I know that a lot of kids in high school these days are growing up K-pop fans, and it never fails to kind of astound me that something from Korea could be considered cool by young people nowadays, because I grew up with quite a different idea of what it meant to be Korean. And so like, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to fully understand that. But it took me, so as a result of my own bias against my own people, it took me a long time to sort of open my mind up to K-pop or Korean hip hop or Korean pop music. But what really hooked me in were these videos that I saw of hip hop dancers, because hip hop is one of my greatest loves. And when I saw that some of the best hip hop artistry is coming out of Korea, that's when I was like, hey, I think my people are legit. So then I started listening to the music, and at first I was kind of like, this is really super weird. it just didn't sound like it. When you listen to K-pop, I think that's the reaction to most people when they first hear it over the age of, like 30, right? It's just like super weird music. But when I heard the song Clap by MFBTY, I know it uplifts me because I literally put it on every day for, I don't know, I think it's been about a year. I don't think a day has gone by that I don't listen to it at one stage of the day as a pick-me-up. It's actually an amazing track when you really break it down. Basically what I've realized, what K-pop does is they're like the ultimate fusion restaurant where they take the best of every cuisine and turn it into a dish. So, for example, crispy, the sweet and sour flavors of Chinese food. We'll bring that in. We'll bring in some of the freshness of Japanese fish and greens, and combine that with the crispy and the salty and the sweet. That's what K-pop does. And
that was vivid.
Yeah, I'm really impressed by how they do that. They're basically what K-pop producers are. They're like scholars of popular music, right? They do what hip hop kind of started. Like, to me, that's what hip hop is, right? It's like fusion of different art forms into one. And K-pop kind of took it to almost a scholarly level by just getting very, very technical about what makes. So it's almost like algorithmic. And I know that doesn't sound very, very good, but that I can't think of a better way to describe it. So in this song,
what a strange juxtaposition in an introduction to a song.
Yeah, it's super strange, and I'm still wrestling with it myself, and that's what intrigues me about it. As a music nerd myself, like when I listen to Clap, it not only gets me excited because I'm like, whoa, like down deep, I'm like, my Korean brothers and sisters are doing some legit stuff here. So it gets me super pumped and provides me with a bit of swagger for the day. But also the music itself is really, really interesting as a music nerd for me, because there are aspects of hip hop rapping in it. There are aspects, if you listen to it, of remnants of the Bee Gees in it, and obviously there's so much influence from basically a history of electronic music in there as well. And also it has different phases, which I'm so fascinated by, and you'll notice this a lot in K-pop, where some of the songs almost feel like 3 or 4 songs in one. You know how sometimes when you watch the American Music Awards or the Grammys, the artists, when they perform, will do like a medley of their songs?
Sure.
Yeah, that's what I think is a relative norm in K-pop, where the song itself is almost like a medley of a history of pop music.
Okay, I'm chomping at the bit. I gotta know. I gotta play this song.
Okay,
I
cool.
have to. Okay, here's Clap by MFBTY.
미소 내 맘을 훔친 범인이고 솔직히 내 맘을 열어놨어 솔직히 네 맘속을 걸어봐 내게 푹 빠진 네 맘속을 훔쳐봐 내가 믿지 못한 걸 믿게 해 나 할 수 있다는 걸 일깨워줘 그런 사랑 영원히 네 곁에서
가득 속
crying like my bride. 위로 올라가죠 위로 높이 올라가. 나랑 같이 아침까지 아낌없이 사랑하지. He know I'ma hold it down. He call me queen. I hold the crown.
너의 눈 썩고 입술 완벽한 모든 건 실수. Oh my, got me open like I see it through the 기수. 떨어져 있더라도 떨어질 수 없어. 그런 사이 힘겹게.
Okay, that was fun. I'm ready to start my day. That was some audio coffee for all of you and for me and Royan. This was such a great time. You know, if you want to learn more about him, you should definitely check out his amazing website. It's full of information about him, what he does, what he offers, how he inspires, the Spicy Learning blog, which I've now subscribed to. And I'm excited to keep learning from you and keep seeing you on the landscape. Thank you so much for coming in today. I usually ask if there's a song that was left out, but I understand that there were many songs that were left out. And I'm so glad that you found a common thread with the songs that you chose to bring to the show today.
Oh, thanks so much, Noah. This has been the most fun I've had in a while. And I just think this podcast idea is amazing. Like you're really bringing something into the education social media space that is sorely needed, in my opinion. Yeah.
You can't see my smile, but that makes me really happy. You know, this comes from my classroom, so I'm happy that it's in an educator space. I love that people are using it in their classrooms, and I think that music is a way in and out for so many people. So I want to thank you again for your time and for spending this narrative time with me and getting to know you and some new music. So have a great day. I'm going to play you out.
See ya.
Thank you for joining us on the P3, the Personal Playlist Podcast. I'm Noah Daniel. This is Voice Ed Radio, and I hope you have a fantastic day.